天のオーラを無数の光子に形を変え、周囲に放った。
Look at that. Really similar to FILMBuFF's scales. Look at this. Such a great application of it. The light that illuminates all, eh? Ooh. It's a jarring sight to see him in this setting, you know, like a home. This type of home, rather. How's Palm going to react? I shall repeat myself. How about that?
ここへ世が来た理由は複雑ではない。ただ一つ、小麦という人間に会いたい。それだけだ。他には何も望まない。お主の念に触れて、世の現状とこの先も理解した。
Oh, now he knows for
それを知った
sure.
上でなお、今世が望むのは残された時間を小麦と過ごしたい。それだけだ。
Palm should be able to tell this is sincere, right? New music. Really similar to Gone.
ちっぽけな私を偽るために自分自身を偽るなんてあれだけの虐殺をそしてこれからも
She's trying.
敗北宣言も人への思いも無理絶対に無理よ真実だからこそ
It's the beginning of this track.
だったと思うどこかで何かがほんの少し
You met Komugi. And it's really similar to Gone as well. From 131.
神とまでは言わぬが
Yeah, but
この世
やめてそうよ私は彼女の居場所を知ってる拷問でも何でも自由にしたら分かってるの
それが不可能なのはお互い
wow, this internal struggle at the moment for Palm.
お主のオーラは今まで見た中で最も強く美しい
Wow.
世にできるのはひたすら頼むことだけだ
No, no, don't do that.
私ももう一部はありあなたが主にとってどれほどの存在か
Wow.
嫌だけど分かってるそこまでそれほどまでそれだけはダメだけど一つ条件がある私の能力であなたを
Oh.
あなたたちを見届けていい、
Wow.
ごめんねキルは約束破っちゃったよ
Man, this track is incredible. Oh. The tears in his eyes. So yeah, Poof. Go on. Give us a smile. Ah. My god. To see FILMBuFF like that, man. You see, oh, in his final moments, he tried to drag and the Hunter Association. Oh.
俺は直接見ちゃいねえ。そこがちょっとばかし微妙でな。パーム待ちだ。
Oh.
いいんですか？王の静止確認をたった1名に任せて。
それは空調完備の部屋で椅子に座ってるやつのプロ意識だ。俺たち現場は 信じた仲間が任せろと言ったら任せるのさ。どっちもプロだ。
Different types of professionals, though, eh?
ジムじゃねえ。
Both sides are needed, though.
通用しませんよ。その
Of course.
バレたら弔問は最低覚悟してくださいよ。
I do kind of hope to see it, to be honest. How fitting, though, Palm being the one who gets to see. Wow. It's as fitting as it gets. Oh.
わし
Oh.
会長、お疲れ様でした。ゆっくりお休みになってください。
Legend.
同日ネテロがハンター協会の会長職を辞する旨と後任人事についてのメッセージが記録された動画が
He had it
サイ
ready.
トで配信され話題となったが
Ooh.
政治家主導の巨大なニュースに書き消され
Ugh.
それが遺言であ
Of
ると
course.
理解した者はごくごくわずかであった。
さあ、乾杯しよう。乾杯しようじゃないか。
Whoa.
人
Who's
という
this?
者どもに善人も悪人もいつの世も人は繰り返す。命など人、血と死とで
Is that not
満たされる
Deagle?
ほどのものなのに。
Simple pleasures. Wow.
終わった。
Oh no. Now show me, eh? Hey, she's using the black pieces this time.
ものすごく久しぶりな気がするす。
Just like that, right back into it. Oh.
やっぱり本物は違いますねや。でも総帥様が助けてくださったのですね。
Supreme
で
leader.
はない。世の配下だ。世には過ぎた者たちだ。
だらばいらっしゃいましたらお礼をば。
世から伝えておこ
Oh, I'll be seeing them
う。
soon.
じきに会う。
Wow.
以前、世の名を聞いたな。
はい。
世の名はメルエムだ。
メルエム、
Oh.
すべてを照らす光。
M 様。
知らなかった。
Hmm.
世は何が大事なものかを。
But you do now,
俺も
right?
知らなか
You
った
do
の
now.
だ。ならば、軍議で世が勝ったら、お主は世を様抜きで呼べ。
Can you beat her though?
わかりました。呼び捨ての後で済んだらいいですか？
死ぬ必要はない。以前の世とは一味違うぞ。
He's got a beautiful smile, doesn't he?
覚悟しておけ。お主が勝ったら何が欲しい？
もう一曲お願いいたします。
Oh.
愚問か。まさか。
712鳥で。
これはココリコ。
Oh, right. Isolated the marshal. The concealment technique.
苦労するか。
私軍議でふざけたことないです。
That's for sure.
白ではないと申すか。世の検討でもいくつか道はあった。だが、それはすべていたずらに手を増やすだけで、活路が薄い禁止路ばかり。活路があると申す。
Yeah. Oh, she's got something. Ooh. Ooh.
462忍び。
Spy.
これは
Right, the whole idea of the spy controlling the board after being on the sidelines.
261牙逆新手だ。いかに
Countered her counter.
どうしたなぜ泣く
Oh, look at that. The animation there.
私がこんなに幸せでいいのでしょうか？私みたいなものにこんなに素敵なことが
Wow.
いくつも起きていいんでしょうか？
やはり
Hmm.
言わねばならぬな。
I almost forgot about that.
毒に侵され長くない。
メルエム様。
最後、小麦、お主と打って過ごしたかった。だが、この毒は伝染する。世のそばに長くいれば、お主にも。
It's not an issue. Not an issue. Immediately just continues. Wow.
ふつつかものですが、お供させてくださ
Wow. Look at this presentation. Oh. This feels like love.
そうか。
Yes.
世は。
私はきっとこの日のために生まれてきました。
この瞬間のために
There it
で
is.
きたのだ。
His purpose in life. True purpose in life. Wow. Man.
441表
Ooh.
651牙。
27
Oh, it's time to go, isn't it?
新
It's all dark.
小麦いるか。
はいな、いますとも。どこに
Oh.
も行きません。
He's gone blind.
451中将。
Oh, is this like a depiction of it?
罪だな。
Oh, the plants.
小麦いるか。
はいはい、いますとも。さあもう一曲、負けた方からですよ。
151水。
951水。
小麦いるか。
He's
はい
blind.
な、もちろん。
How about that though?
メルエム様の番ですよ。
少しだけ疲れた。ほんの少し眠るから。このまま手を握っていてくれる。
Requesting physical affection in his final moments.
小麦いるか。
聞いてますとも。わかりました。
それまでそばにいてくれるか。
離れたことありませんよ。ずっと一緒です。
小麦
はいはい。何ですか？
Oh.
ありがとう。
Oh, and she finally gets to see him for the first time.
最後に
はい。
And he gets to see from her perspective.
呼んでくれないか。
おやすみなさい。メルエム。私もすぐ
Wow.
行きますから。
Ugh. Wow. She dropped the sama at the end there. Wow. Yeah, man, I need a moment. I need a moment. Okay, so Hunter x Hunter, episode 135. Yeah, I need a bit of a break after that conclusion. Now, of course, the ending, not the ending of the episode itself, but, the preview aspect of it, that's diabolical. Diabolical, man. But listen, it's just part of the game, isn't it? Part of production, being on television and all that, on streaming services. It's maybe not up to the production committee, to put that in, because of course it just doesn't make any sense to put that in after putting us through the final moments of that episode, or just the entire episode really. But it's just how it is. It's diabolical, but there's not much else I can say about it, right? It's not on Togashi. It's not on the people that are part of this staggering episode in terms of the production side of things, putting it all together for us as a package, as an incredible package, right? Repurposing Togashi's writing and his his drawings, his illustrations in, in this media form, or in this form of media, rather, excuse me. I think they're faultless. I think, all of those people and everyone that's been a part of this episode, and again, all the episodes leading up to this as well, there's a really strong run leading up to this. They deserve all the credit, alongside the mastermind himself, Togashi. And of course, I do have much to say about Togashi in this post-episode portion. But, yeah, it's just one of those episodes that you simply have to take a break, right? And, it's kind of like that. It's a strange aspect of being a content creator, isn't it? I'm sure many of my fellow content creators can understand if, anyone happens to be listening to this. But, just in general, I'm sure most content creators that do take this type of approach to storytelling, really taking a deep dive and analyzing, because of the love of it and all of that. The main difference I've noticed over the last 6, 7, maybe going into 8 years of content creation, on and off, yes, I know, but, it's still a long time. You're usually not able to let it sit for a bit, right? Listen, realistically speaking, it's a bit of an unnatural process, isn't it? Content creation. This type of content creation, the one that requires a lot of, processing, a lot of just sitting there. Because, a lot of this stuff is just so emotionally resonant, and it just shakes you to the core, right? There's a message, there's a thematic core, there's love, time and effort put into these messages through these character arcs, and just, the whole thematic message as a whole, right? It's unnatural. It just is. But, the whole point is to make it as natural as possible. Again, it's part of the game, being a content creator and trying to, analyze stuff, and sharing your thoughts, much more quickly than you would naturally. And yeah, sometimes it does feel like night and day, being a content creator and approaching the subject matter in this capacity, in comparison to how I used to consume media. I mean, of course, I still do that for a lot of things, film and other stuff that's off screen. But, for the stuff that is on screen, yeah, you're not really afforded the chance to let it sit for a bit. I mean, some of the incredible stuff that's being presented in a lot of the storytelling I'm consuming for the channel as a content creator, there's some deep themes here, right? Stuff that requires a bit of introspection, requires you as an audience member to really, dig deep, search deep, and kind of connect and, try to form opinions on the stuff the storyteller is putting out there, in this specific case, Togashi. And listen, on Togashi, this episode right here is one of the most satisfying, one of the most fulfilling episodes I've experienced in recent memory. Right, for anything. I mean, in that sense, it's an immediate contender for episode of the arc itself. I mean, I can't say at this moment in time outright that this is the best episode of the arc. And, that's just simply a credit to the arc itself, that it is full of such incredible, monumental, memorable, deeply moving episodes. Right, so I'm not able to say right away, oh, episode 135, masterpiece. I could say that. I do feel like it's a bit of a masterpiece. For sure, it is. It simply is, but, I'm not able to say immediately that it's the best of the lot, right? There's just too many contenders for that, in my opinion. Again, listen, these episodes I speak of, and that includes this episode right here, 135, these are the types of episodes that kind of change, right, over the years of coming back to it. Change in the sense that, you come back to it at a different point in time in your life. It could mean something else. Right? You could kind of extract another meaning out of it, or you're able to relate to a certain aspect of it much more clearly, right? Or maybe something new altogether. So these episodes are that ilk of storytelling, right? So things change, right? I could come back to some of these episodes a month from now. It could just all of a sudden, spark something different inside of me, and, just elevate certain moments and episodes to the top, and maybe, certain episodes drop a bit further down, right? Listen, it's not a competition or anything, but, I'm sure many of us do this, right? You just internally, you almost immediately tend to rank episodes and, you know, how those episodes made you feel in that moment. This is up there. It's an absolute contender for one of the best. And, you know, going back to episode 91 or 90, the arrival of Meruem, Togashi made a promise to me as an audience member. It's an unspoken promise, but it's a promise nonetheless, right? The moment Meruem shows up as the Chimera and King, I'm given this exciting opening, right? If you'll remember, I said all that time ago, you know, him showing up in this manner and him behaving in this manner, you know, on arrival, it's one of the most exciting introductions, one of the most exciting parts of this anime up until that point, right? Because the writing dictates it. At that point, you know, I was in, early 90s in terms of episodes. At that point, I knew enough of Togashi's writing. I've experienced enough of Togashi's writing at that point to know him introducing this character in this manner means that there's a strong possibility that I'm about to get one of the standout character arcs of this entire anime, right? And listen, you know, it goes beyond anime. I've said this is something I've said a few times for a few moments, for a few episodes, and a few character arcs and character moments throughout this anime. Yeah, most of this stuff, a lot of this stuff, it goes beyond anime, right? It's the type of stuff that's able to stand shoulder to shoulder with just other amazing stuff. All-timer film moments, all-timer live action, television moments, right? Books, gaming, all of that, right? Media all together. It's up there, man. It's up there. The journey that I've experienced through Meruem, and the conclusion that he arrives at over the span of these past few episodes. And, you know, in that sense, this episode kind of just continues that idea from episode 134 being perhaps the most important of the Chimera Ant arc. This just continues that. The things that happen here are just, you know, naturally the most important aspects of this arc, right? Given the people at the center of it all, right? And that includes Komugi. That includes Komugi because she is the catalyst for it all. On her first appearance, it's really made quite clear that, you know, this is about to be something that's going to just rattle this character to its core, right? Deviate from this trajectory. And again, you know, the narrator doubles down and makes sure to let us know that indeed, you know, this is an individual, the catalyst for Meruem and his arc. And indeed, that is the case. Ultimately, you know, she brought out the best of Meruem. She facilitated that. Right? There's others that played a part, but you simply cannot overlook just how important Komugi has been to all of this, right? She's here at the end of days, at the end of the line, you know, side by side, hand in hand with King Meruem. You know, it's just an incredibly beautiful thing that these two found each other, and they both understood at the same time, in that same moment, that this is the reason they were born. I mean, you see just how confident Komugi has become, right? In the presence of the supreme leader, then Meruem-sama, then Meruem. How beautiful, you know, and of course, you know, Meruem's subsequent treatment of Komugi has brought this side out of her. But yeah, in terms of her being the catalyst for all of this, yeah, of course, it happened in stages. And, you know, there's some incredible moments along the ride, of course. But, you know, ultimately, through these encounters, these incredible encounters, and you see that he most definitely understands the journey itself has been so important to all of this. Him finally understanding the things that matter most. He just completely understood by the end of it, even though it's short-lived, his life, that, you know, everything that happened to him, the journey itself, it's just been so damn important to everything that he is at this point in his life, right? At the end of his life, unfortunately, but still, because ultimately the things that have happened in his short time span are just, I don't know, worth a lifetime and beyond. I spoke of this in the last episode's discussion. This is more so an enlightened figure, right? He said to Palm earlier that, you know, he in this state, you know, I don't feel quite like a god or anything, but then, you know, he's about to say something else and he stops. You know, essentially, he kind of is, right? And this is something I'm just saying as an audience member. You know, I'm not saying that that's, you know, just 100% locked on or anything, but, you know, he is. Some of the things that he's experienced, the conclusions that he's come to, I just believe he is this enlightened figure, right? That he is kind of sitting there shoulder to shoulder with someone like Netero at this point, as well. And, this concept of the journey itself being just as important, it's not something new, is it? For a long span of this anime, before the Chimera Ant itself, Chimera Ant arc, rather, that was at play in Gon's own journey. Yes, he does have a final definitive destination in mind, and that's, finding Jing and speaking with Jing about, being a hunter and, why exactly it was so important to him and all of that. But it became so clear as I go through these episodes and arcs that, clearly, it's most definitely about the journey itself as well. And, that's not just something that's unique to this story. That's just a fact of life as well, isn't it? Right? But yeah, you see the Gon, and again, much more recently, you see it through Kite as well, right? Someone else that's closely linked to Jing himself. The journey itself is one of the most important things there is, right? To experience some of the simpler things, the simple pleasures of life as well, right? And don't miss out on that stuff in the pursuit of a definitive final goal. And again, this is one of those things that I can apply to my life directly as well. And I have over the last few years, even, before Hunter x Hunter itself. And, this message, it's a simple message, but it's a poignant one at that. I noticed that I was kind of letting things slip by, moments slip by. I was kind of focused on really specific goals. And, I remember just thinking, listen, man, that's the type of thing that I can't get back. Some of these simple pleasures of life and all that, as they go by me. If you watch a lot of my monster content, yes, there's been a bit of a break there as well, but that's coming back. That's coming back soon enough. During the post-episode portions of that anime as well, I've spoken about, making much more of an effort in terms of, spending more time with my parents, my family, siblings and all of that. So yeah, this stuff, it can affect you quite a bit, right? And, that was the point I was making about that double-edged sword of being a content creator. Sometimes you have to kind of, dial in. You have to lock in almost immediately after an episode ends. But if I'm being honest, I think I've done a decent job, right? Again, it can always be better, but I feel like I've done all right. I think I've kind of learned how to balance it. But, speaking of the journey and the simple pleasures of life and not missing out on all of that, here, in essentially one of the final, few episodes of the Chimera Ant arc, Togashi manages to bring Digo back into it. I saw the neck, I saw the haircut, and his earlobes and all that. I knew I'm looking at Digo, but I didn't know how exactly I'm looking at Digo, right? It became clear really quite quickly that, okay, Digo, another person that came to a similar conclusion, or in this case you can say Meruem came to the same conclusion as some of the same conclusions as Digo, right? The things that matter most are some of these simple pleasures in life. You see that Digo 30 years ago, right? Because this is meant to be his 30th year in retirement on a farm of all places, right? But I don't say that in a derogatory manner, just in comparison to how Digo is presented earlier in the anime, right? He understood that he's not built for that life, or maybe at first he thought he is, but he understood quickly that no, this can't be everything life's about here, right? To be this tyrant, to be this dictator, a role that he was born into as well, much like our King Meruem. I just think it's so crazy that, here at the end of the line, essentially, Togashi uses Digo, right, to kind of, drive that point home, right, that you can choose not to be a king. You can walk away from it, right, again, as he did 30 years ago, right, you can choose to be something else. You can think about yourself, right, you can have that agency, right, in a sense, you can be selfish. Both Meruem and Digo arrived at the same conclusion, more or less. Life can be so fleeting, so the simpler things can be enough. I mean, sure, it may have been short-lived, but, these final few hours that they got to spend together, Meruem and Komugi, that's worth a lifetime. That's worth a lifetime. Finally understanding his purpose, realizing that he was born to experience this happiness and this state of, or this sense of completion with that special person that sits opposite to the Gungi board, Komugi, right? The love of his life. The love of his life. I mean, you know, that much is clear in the last episode as well. I was about to say, you know, it doesn't even have to be a romantic type of love. But, you know, there's certain imagery there, you know, the presentation of it as well, that does, you know, imply that, okay, there is romantic love as well. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing at all. That's incredible. That's beautiful. But, you know, going back to him, you know, understanding that, you know, this is his purpose, you know, it kind of goes back to that idea of simple pleasures. You know, all of this comes out of these Gungi encounters, right? You know, this profound happiness is uncovered through these Gungi encounters. And of course, you know, Gungi is something so important, the most important thing to Komugi, right? It's intrinsically linked to her identity, right? It saved her. It's her happy place. It's who she is, right? Given you know, that whole presentation of her low self-esteem, being, you know, feeling worthless to her own family, right? If she can't bring in prize money from this, she can't really do much else, that she is a burden as a blind person, right? Gungi is her happy place. And one of the most beautiful things about this is that, you know, she gets to share that happy place with the supreme leader. But again, by the end of it all, Meruem. My God, it's beautiful stuff. You know, I'm kind of getting chills, goosebumps. And of course, you know, if you look at it from Komugi's perspective, this is something incredibly special to her. You know, again, first of all, because she's just this incredible, you know, mastermind at the game itself. But, you know, to have an equal, essentially, someone who can hang in there, someone who can, you know, create tactics together, right? Back and forth and all of that. You know, you see that Kokoriko comes up again, right? You know, the marshal, I suppose the marshal is the king, right? In that sense, you know, being isolated again, you know, I spoke of this idea of the Gungi matches themselves kind of spelling out the larger story at play in terms of the palace attack and how things might play out. But, you know, the fact that she found an equal, you see, you know, she's just incredibly just moved. And for her, you know, this is the happiest she can ever be, right? This moment is perfect. She felt that she was born for this moment, right? And it's just this incredibly personal thing for her, even back then, around the time the king unknowingly, you know, uses Kokoriko. I mean, from his perspective, it's something new that he devised on his own, right? He didn't actually get any help doing it. But, you know, again, given the fact that Komugi's a mastermind, she knew, and, you know, it just completely floored her, right? And she described it as seeing her child again, and, you know, the idea of killing her child again instantly just, you know, it kind of almost petrified her, right? After she was kind of, you know, pushed by that Meruem. In terms of, you know, okay, you knew you had me, so how come you took so long? But of course, you know, before I move on, maybe that's one element of this that, you know, wasn't as engaging perhaps. And I only say that simply because I don't know. I just don't simply know the intricacies of this, you know, made up game. And again, that is by design as well. I doubt there's, okay, you know, I should take that back. I'm sure there's someone out there that's actually, you know, gotten really close to actually understanding all the elements of a Gungi match. But, you know, it is kind of like that by design as well, right? But, you know, I think Togashi did a good enough job to explain some of the tactics that are really focused on as well, you know, Kokoriko and, you know, the spy and the marshal, and, you know, ultimately Komugi being that spy figure in all of it, controlling the board, you know, after essentially sitting it out for most of it, you know, that aspect of it, that aspect of the tactics of it. And then, of course, you know, the incredible moments here of, you know, countering the counter itself. And then, you know, ultimately, the final Gungi match, at least on this plane of existence, that does take place in complete darkness at that, you know, because, again, it becomes clear that, yeah, King Meruem, you know, I shouldn't call him king anymore. He made the choice to give that up. He renounced that responsibility, right? He essentially does it in the last episode, but here it's really, you know, solidified as he approaches Palm. And, you know, I didn't even get to that just yet. That right there, the opening, him and Palm, one of the standout moments of the entire arc as well. One of the most important, right? And yeah, you know, it turns out indeed Palm plays an incredible part, an incredible role here at the end of things, right? comes face to face with this incredible being, right, in this state, in his final state, right? Though, of course, there's one more incredible moment that happens for him as he does kind of get to spend final few moments with Komugi. But yeah, that's an incredible, staggering scene. Some of the things that happen in that scene, you saw, I'll get to that. I'll get to that. It deserves its own section, much like how Poof deserves his own section. And, there's, of course, stuff that's being set up, right? It's certainly about endings and beginnings here, because this right here certainly felt like a definitive wrap-up for this part of the Chimera Ant arc, one of the most important parts of the Chimera Ant arc. But, at this point, there's still a lot of things that need to be wrapped up. So this isn't clearly the end of the arc itself, but certainly the end of a definitive part of this arc, and that is the character arc itself of Meruem and the journey he's been on and the impact of humanity on this special being, right, throughout his short-lived journey. Short-lived, but really, really quite poignant. The stuff he's experienced is the type of stuff most people can go their entire life without experiencing, right? Again, just speaking of these things, I'm getting chills, getting a little bit teary-eyed here and there as well, because, I am thinking about the imagery. Maybe I should go back to that point I was making about the final Gungi match, right? It appears the final two pieces are the two marshals, right? The two kings. And at that point, he tells Komugi, I'm feeling a bit tired now, right? Again, in the darkness, because it appears that he has lost his eyesight. His functions are beginning to, or they have at this point, begun to fail him, or his senses, rather, have begun to fail him. And I think even that scene right there, as heartbreaking as it is, it's just, my God, it's beautiful, isn't it? Here at the end of the line, he finally kind of has an even better understanding for Komugi, right? Because now he is blind himself, much like Komugi. And then Komugi, right at the end of things, gets to finally see the Supreme Leader's face, to see Meruem's face, right? She finally gets to touch him, his face specifically, right? And then, of course, he requested physical affection, essentially, in those final moments. He felt the need for that connection. And, that's one of the most heartbreaking things about this, that he understands that his loyal guards, the 3 royal guards, they didn't get any of that, right? They didn't get any of that. I mean, that's, wow, I'm thinking of that image of them, essentially from, that take on the afterlife, looking on fondly, beautiful smiles on their faces. They are born into this world with one goal only, right? One purpose, and that is to be loyal to their king. Absolute loyalty. And, you see that Meruem understands the unintended tragedy of it all, right? That at the end of the day, he gave up that responsibility of king, right? So their death kind of loses a bit of meaning once again on top of that, right? Again, maybe looking at it from Meruem's perspective, right? He said he's not worthy, or he wasn't worthy of their loyalty. Wow. I mean, that's, the highest compliment possible for the royal guards. But, I'll come back to those final moments. I kind of want to go back to that idea of Meruem finally understanding his purpose, his role in life, that, ultimately this was his enlightenment, his nirvana, and all of that, right? As already kind of showcased in episode 134, the last episode. Again, one of the most beautiful depictions of love. And even there, you see that it's essentially even hinting at it, right? That these two people are linked forever, in the afterlife and beyond as well. At this point, life ends, but love is forever, right? Love is forever. As cliche as it might seem, the message here is beautiful. It truly is. And listen, this is the first love and the last love, the final love for both of them. But yeah, Meruem coming to the conclusion that a person needs affection, right? Warming love, and, beyond that, even, physical affection, right? As he requested in his final moments. And ultimately, as she told him, I'll be seeing you soon. I'll be joining you soon, as he also stated earlier on in the episode, right, about seeing his own royal guards soon enough. So, again, regardless of, people believing in the afterlife or not believing in the afterlife, the thought of it, though, it's a nice thought, isn't it? That some of these people, these characters believe, that there's more to it, right? That they're not spending these final moments thinking that, oh man, this is, all of this, it's for nothing. They're looking at it as, okay, it's a goodbye for now until they meet again soon enough, right? I do love the idea of that, that, the guards are going to get to see the king, their king again, that the love of Komugi and Meruem is going to live on forever. Yes, ultimately, it's a bittersweet moment, isn't it? And you see that it is a bittersweet moment for Meruem as well, right? He finds himself essentially being exactly, where he wants to be at the end of days, at the end of his life. His royal guards, on the other hand, they're not afforded the exact same opportunities, the exact same agency that he's all about at this point, right? Empathy. One of the main themes of this episode is empathy. It's coursing with empathy, beginning to end. And, this idea of Meruem giving up that responsibility altogether, right? And this essentially begins in the beginning of the episode as well, to Palm's complete and utter shock, right? Palm actually goes through something similar to Gon in episode 116, right? Him coming across Pito and the scenes of, her protecting and healing someone, a human at that. And, of course, Gon had quite a struggle. He struggles quite a bit with the connotations of this because he's expecting to just, this whole time, he's got a really clear image in his mind. I'm going to come across Pito. I'm going to say this. There might be an altercation, but, I'm going to make her take me to Kite and she'll fix Kite. Life is not that easy, though, right? He comes in and he sees that scene and it nearly just breaks him. It does break him, actually. It breaks his mind. But you see that Palm is in a similar situation, but she's able to kind of handle it a bit more, effectively by the end of it. I'll get to that in a bit, but, this idea of Meruem, giving up the responsibility of Chimera and King, rescinding it, because ultimately, being or continuing to be the Chimera and King, it essentially meant questioning the personal agency of others, right? For the sake of his own goal as that king, that absolute king of all beings, right? Meruem simply could not continue in that role anymore. With his enlightenment and his newfound purpose in life, definitive purpose in life, the personal agency of others must be respected. Everyone's, right? This is how Meruem must see it at that point. That personal fulfillment can come and does come from, that personal agency. And he's not about robbing anyone of that personal agency any further. And, going back to that idea of him not feeling worthy of the Royal Guard's loyalty, you see it hurts him. It truly hurts him now, doesn't it? Just how much they really meant to him, right? And again, this happened really quite recently as well, after that incredible bonding experience, after his rebirth, right? He's able to really kind of understand them a bit more. And, I think it was one of my talking points, after a certain point, he is going to appreciate them for who they are much more than earlier, Meruem. And, this idea of personal agency, you see that it's one of his big regrets here in terms of his relationship with the Royal Guards, right? Because they're only born for one purpose and one purpose only, much like how Meruem was born for one purpose only, but he had the opportunity to step away from that. His guards, not so much, right? And, that's the point I was making about this unintended further tragedy at play here. All three of them were born into this role, and this role only, yet ultimately that role didn't even exist anymore, or it doesn't exist anymore. He gave it up, right? And he knew just how dedicated all three of them are. And that includes Poof, man. It does. I spoke of moments in this episode that are just definitive moments, the types of moments that live on forever in your mind. The segment of Poof and that, that flute solo take on that really specific track, and it feels a little bit silly to not be able to mention the name of the tracks because I don't know the name of the tracks, but that's one. I don't know, man. That's one of the most affecting, one of the most haunting moments of the arc for me. To see Poof again accompanied with that really specific musical choice as well. I mean, it completely crushed me, man, to see him in that state, to see him go out like that. Even though it's clear that, he is about to go out like that in episode 134, it's a tough sight. It's a really tough sight. You see that he tried crawling in those final moments as he leaves a trail of blood, right? That really unique purple blood. You see that he's got tears streaming down his face. Not blood, right? You see it's a distinction. There's tears running down his face. I mean, his final moments are the complete opposite of everything, his late king gets to experience in his final moments with Komugi. So again, I only speak for myself. It's a heartbreaking moment. There, that happened off screen. I didn't need to see him choke to death and, those final moments of him actually, dying. But, the build-up and the impactful moments happened in episode 134. That was the point I was making about Yuppie's death, right? I didn't get any of that for him. And it's just a preference thing. I think Yuppie deserved a bit more, right? I understand, I completely understand the idea behind all of it. Togashi's writing for that scene. I get it. At the end of the day, people can have preferences. And it is a really effective scene in its presentation and its jarring nature and all of that. Coming to understand that this is it. He just died. There's no more of Yuppie, right? It felt like a gut punch, right? But the intention is clear. I got the intention. I would have preferred a different approach for Yuppie, especially now that I've seen, how Pito gets to go out, right? How Poof gets to go out in terms of, episode 134 being a major focus on his final moments. And then, of course, I see this haunting, moment, this haunting sight, his corpse kind of telling a story of his own final moments as well. But yeah, Poof is most definitely one of the, top 5 characters of this arc for me. It's the type of character that's required, right? As that friction, as that foil to the king, rather the things that the king is experiencing and going through, the king's own metamorphosis. You need someone like that. And you see, because of that inclusion, that type of character, one of the royal guards being that type of character, it's just really dynamic stuff, isn't it? Just that component of it being a part of it. But, as he understood in the last episode, he never had a chance, right? His rigid and lofty expectations of this Chimera and king, something he simply could not deviate from at all. Yeah, it all ends tragically for him, right? He was destined to fail, but ultimately, most definitely a needed character archetype in this case, in this scenario, as a first circle character to Meruem. You think of some of these characters. Let's use Breaking Bad for example, and use Walters for a circle of characters. You look at Hank and the dynamic he brings. You look at Marie. You look at Jesse. Right? Maybe Marie's not a first circle of characters, but Hank and Jesse, and of course, let's not forget one of the most important first circle characters, right? Skylar. And then, of course, Gus and Mike and all of that a little bit later on, and everything they bring to that character. I believe back in episodes 107 or 108, I posed the question, how is Poof going to handle this metamorphosis that's happening within the king and that he has most definitely clocked at this point, and how exactly he's going to approach this? How exactly is he going to reconcile this idea of that king, that one king that he's been born to serve is not going to be that ideal one true king figure for the Chimera Ants. But yeah, Poof. An artist, a dreamer whose scope is simply, or it was just far too grand, right? Far too grand. And perhaps unrealistic from other perspectives rather. And essentially, you see his defeat, you see his ending in the last episode, right? And that's one of the reasons I kind of felt that. I suspect that that's probably the last of Shalapoof playing any further role in this. It ends up being true, but given the fact that his own identity was so intrinsically linked to the Chimera and King, the One King, right? His expectation. Lofty expectations at that of the one king he was born to serve and programmed essentially to serve. You see all of that dies with the king giving up that responsibility essentially in recent episodes, and really specifically Shalapoof understanding in the last episode that that idea of the king never existed. He had no chance. So his actual death is essentially in the last episode. This is just essentially showing us his final moments, or alluding to his final moments. And like I said, it's heartbreaking, to know that he's just alone, defeated, completely defeated, has no purpose. His king has gone to, meet the one person he cares for most, and he dies surrounded by these humans, even though those humans are not in a good state, are they? And especially because, he's been poisoned, or he's, long gone at this point. But, his scales must have spread that poison to those people as well, right? So I'm not sure in terms of the dosing of it, but, those people are affected for the rest of their lives if they do survive. But, the one thing is, he said his skills are not as effective as they used to be. And of course, I spoke of Yuppie, dying like that as well, alone in his final moments. I suppose you could say Pito. Yes, she experiences a brutal death, of course, but, she goes off fighting for her king right till the last moments, beyond her last moments as well, right? And going out, with the understanding and expectation, okay, this individual whose fangs could reach the king at some point, ultimately, he's on the way out as well, right? She understood that, okay, he's made a deal with the devil essentially, and that gave her closure, that gave her a bit of ease, at least, that all of that wrath is going to be taken out on her. She'll accept all of that on behalf of the king. So the king doesn't have to face it, right? Looking at it from Neferpito's perspective. So Neferpito actually goes out fighting, goes out a little bit content, right? Fighting for her king. But yeah, that's one of the most devastating scenes for me. And it just is, right? The directional choices there are just immense, to use, again, that flute solo of that really specific track. And to show me the aftermath of Shawpoof's death as his cape, flies off. Beautiful, again, storyboarding and animation and all of that. His cape just flies off into the distance and off he goes. But, speaking of poignant moments, devastatingly effective moments, I simply have to go to that scene immediately right after this. Meruem kneeling, beginning to kneel, bending the knee to Palm. Wow. Wow, that jolted me to the core, as you saw. It's not something, it's not imagery, it's not an action that I expected at all, right? It immediately hits you in the face, doesn't it? Right? And one of the highest compliments I can give to Tagashi's writing for Meruem is that, as an audience member at that point in time, I have such respect for Meruem and everything he's become that I did not want him to bend the knee, to kneel, much like how Palm did not want that, right? It's really quite deliberate that the audience is being put in the same position as Palm, right? A sudden jolt to the system. He lowers his head and he's about to kneel in front of you. So both Palm and I had the exact same reaction to that. No, absolutely not. I did not want him to kneel, right? Because of the immense respect I have for him as a character at this point. Even though he's given up that moniker of king, at this point in time, after he's given it up, that's the most respect I've had for him as king, right? To the point that I do not want him to kneel. It's incredible stuff. It really, truly is. And Palm understood. She's really quite similar to, Meruem in that sense. Really, really quite similar. She can understand the perspective, one foot in each door, Chimera ant and human, right? And she's really quite lucid about it all as well. Right? It's not as if, she's having this internal tug of war, right? Chimera ant and the human aspect of it. Yes, you see that there's a really, distinct internal component to it because she completely understands the things that are happening here. But, there's this aspect of almost allowing herself to be delusional about it, right? Trying to agitate the king, trying to get him to react in a manner that she deems, normal at that point in time. Right, much like how Gon wanted a really specific reaction out of Pito, but he just couldn't get it. It didn't exist at that point. But, Palm's is a little bit different because deep down she knows, she understands all of it, but it's not going to be as easy as she thought. Because, of course, from her perspective, it would have been, so much easier if he was that monster. In her mind, perhaps, it would have made this really cruel deed of hers a bit easier to digest. Because she understood alongside Ikalgo, right? Ikalgo's the one who actually felt it, and, Palm had to kind of, speak on it. That she does understand, this is not... So the thing that they're about to do here, or planning on doing here, it's cruel. It just is, right? But, this made it infinitely more difficult for her. But ultimately, you see that Meruem appears to her free of any such attributes that she might have had, built up in her mind, this profile that she might have had in her mind, right? Standing before her is someone humble, making a final request, and she begins to just get crushed internally, right? With immense guilt at that point. And the thing is, both Zeno and the chairman saw this side of Meruem back in episode 112, right? His treatment of Komugi, right? They saw it as an act of love, of life. And if they infringe upon it, their cause is lost, because at that point it would become inhumane, right? And you see that Palm begins to feel something really quite similar. But you see that his treatment of Palm is one of respect. He treated her as an equal, right? He's gentle, he's kind in his approach. I mean, she tries to fight it right till the end, until, he feels like there's only one thing left to do at this point. All I can do is ask for your help. And at that point, he begins to lower his head and begins to bend the knee, right? Just completely humble and sincere in his request. There's not an ounce of bruised ego, right? None of that. This is how much he's changed. The idea of this doesn't embarrass him. It simply doesn't. That's how much Komugi meant to him. That's how much it means to spend these final moments with Komugi. Nothing else matters. He understands that now, right? But of course, Palm has quite a definitive reaction to that, much like myself, right? She could not allow it. She still has respect for this person, this being, essentially as one half Chimera Ant herself. And even before that, right, before he begins to bend the knee, before he begins to kneel, there's an incredible moment for Palm as a character, and just incredible moment for her character arc. Your aura is as strong and beautiful as any I have ever beheld, right? This is coming from this omnipotent, enlightened being, right? From, her Chimera Ant perspective, the king of all Chimera Ants, the pinnacle, Palm being the one to experience those final moments, to watch those final moments, those really, beautiful final moments. It's as fitting as it gets, right? And it's a beautiful moment for her own arc. I feel like it's just as perfect as it gets. It really is, her getting to experience that love, that appreciation, that unconditional love between Meruem and Komugi. And yeah, you see, it certainly does a number on her. And she also ultimately serves as a living record for the Chimera Ant King. And, the person he became by the end of it all, and how he spent his final moments. That's a big deal. That's as big as it gets, really, right? Of course, there's questions of moral a little bit later on through a reoccurring character who had his own, sad goodbye to the chairman as well. He appears to be one of the few characters that's really quite close to him, the chairman, that is, just through association and the role he finds himself in, the job title rather. But yeah, you see, it's a bit more than that. It's an emotional thing to say goodbye to the chairman. You'll have to excuse me, I'm forgetting the name. I think I got the name right. But, speaking of, final records and all of that, the last person who did know of Netero's final moments, the final record of everything, that man put on the line and goes through in those final moments, he's passed on as well now, Meruem, right? And now his official final record is, this message that he prepared, though ultimately you see that even that message is lost in the commotion of it all, right? In the noise of it all. It's almost kind of immediately put into the background, him still playing a part, him, making sure that there's some structure, for the Hunter Association. He's still batting for the Hunter Association by doing that, by making that choice, by recording that, by providing a roadmap and essentially kind of helping as much as he can in terms of, taking that heat off of the Hunter Association. Though, of course, there is going to be some heat, right? Moral, again, he has been told that, again, the vice chairman and his faction are not going to just accept that. So, expect some kind of questioning. So, once again, they bring up the vice chairman. The thing is, I've got a decent amount of episodes left at this point, and, there's a lot of aftermath that has to be taken care of here, a lot of connotations. So there's a good chance I actually might get to see this character soon enough, especially given the fact that Netero has left instructions for the choosing of his successor. So yeah, good setup there. Exciting setup there, actually. But before I move on from the whole Palm and Meruem scene, you really almost immediately get to see how different Meruem is now, right? you see that he'll repeat himself as many times as necessary for Komugi. And this is a person who completely, since day one, since his birth, hated repeating himself. Don't make me repeat myself, right? He's so above all of that now, right? He simply does not care. If you go back to Palm in her first few appearances, and, her aura specifically, especially, given the things that Meruem had to say about her aura in this episode, at that point, you see that aura, the energy she's giving off is one of anxiety and depression, right? Manifestation of all of that stuff, or representation of depression, or a depiction of it, right? That was my reading of it at the time. I said that this is the type of character that can really get me to sit up in my seat. And I said that, at that point, it became clear that this is someone that needs affection, someone who wishes being respected, and that they do matter, and being treated with kindness. And, of course, Gon's reaction to her kind of almost provides all of that, almost instantly, right? Yes, it's a bit of a dicey moment as well, but you see there's more to it than that. It's a bit more nuanced than that, and I knew I could see it back then, right? Because, again, Gon's reaction is one of respect, one of reassurance, and to me it felt like this is not something she's used to, right? Not something she's used to getting at all from the looks of it, from anyone. So to see her journey through all of this is just, it's so satisfying, isn't it? You go back to episode 124, a significant moment in her character arc as well, right? Her becoming that hybrid actually being so beneficial for her, right? In terms of grounding her, being in check with her emotions at that point. And then, of course, the things that happened for her in this episode, my goodness. Incredible stuff. I simply could not think of any other person who should be, looking in on Meruem and Komugi's final moments. She's a perfect fit. Simply the perfect fit for this. I feel like she really truly deserved to see that loving moment, those final moments, right? Once in a lifetime type moments. And, she'll certainly carry that for the rest of her life. And I think it must have just completely changed her as well, once again. But let's kind of go back to Meruem's arc. Let's kind of look at the beginnings and endings. But, if you go back to episode 91, I believe, his arrival, right, his birth. Do not make me repeat myself, right? One of the first things he said, it's made so clear on his arrival the type of person he is, right? On birth, or at birth, rather, on arrival. His arrival is messy, it's aggressive, he leaves a path of destruction, essentially, right? Including his own mother, who he clearly has such an appreciation for at this point, right? You see that he immediately executes Peggy. And Peggy specifically is such a unique aunt in that colony at that point, right? Because Peggy was the one that's, devoted to and committed to learning as much as possible, understanding as much as possible about humans, their practices, right? And just human nature altogether, right? You see that almost immediately he ends up doing something that's perhaps one of the worst things he's done on arrival. Right? Imagine if Peggy was still around by his side, or he had access to someone like Peggy throughout this arc, right? Yeah, these are the types of things that, I kind of spoke of. Maybe not that idea of Peggy specifically, but that he'll regret a lot of things later on, right? Because it's clear, this idea that this character is going to go through quite a metamorphosis. That's clear on arrival, right? Because otherwise, it's just a bit of a stale character. Right? Nothing compelling about it, but speculating on that and then getting to experience that are two different things altogether. It's just so satisfying and fulfilling. But yeah, you see that he cannibalizes Peggy almost immediately as well. He kills a little girl like it's nothing at that point, because ultimately at that point it is kind of like it's nothing, right? That's his nature at that point. Let's not forget, the Chimera ants, this is their nature. It has been their nature, right? And then of course human DNA got mixed into the gene pool, and then you see how things play out. And all of that. But, it's a little bit beyond that nature as well, because now, they are becoming a danger to humans, right? At least in that area for the time being. But then you get to episode 92, right? And I posed the question, let's see if he lives up to it. And that's in terms of finding out his name and the meaning of his name. The light that illuminates all. My goodness, does he live up to it and then some. I'm so sure that his mother, the late Queen Mother, must be so proud of Meruem. And then, of course, one of the most significant moments, one of the major moments for his character arc and the trajectory of that arc and that metamorphosis is around episode 108. Komugi asked his name, and this is after, he asked Komugi's name, and that just, you see that it just completely rattles him. And like I said, the deconstruction began in that episode, a state of disunity, a full-blown identity crisis. I believe I said it's a textbook case of contradiction between characterization and true nature. I mean, it was clear at that point that he's on this path now to uncovering and finding his true self, right? His core essence, his authentic nature. And that was exciting. That was so damn exciting. And you see from that point on, a lot of these really interesting internal questions come about, right? And also you see that at that point, he's also actively beginning to care about someone else's needs before his own. And, this is around the time Komugi gets attacked, and he's got this really unknown or, foreign reaction, right? Instant reaction, instincts under pressure. And then, of course, he's asking himself questions like his place in the world, his role in all of it, his purpose, right? The purpose of his existence. A nameless king in a borrowed castle, right? This was his inauthentic existence, and he already kind of clocked it at that point. He understood it. And it became clear to both us, the audience, and Meruem as well in some capacity, that his narrative identity and his lived experience are not quite the same. And then, of course, in recent episodes, post-miniature rose all the way up to this final episode for him, I've seen him go through his reconstruction phase, right? His authentic nature front and center, new ways of being. And in that reconstruction phase, I did see Meruem get in touch with and embrace his need, right? The most essential aspect of, his authentic nature. And then, here at last, Meruem achieved a state of unity, right? As he proclaims, I'm not who I used to be. I'm not the same person. This is in the conversation, during his gungi matches with Komugi in that home, in that makeshift home. But, as a whole, you see that they do kind of have a home together. It's a nice thought that they spent their final moments in a home together. But yeah, it's just so incredibly satisfying to, see him achieve this unity, right? His symbolic state of wholeness, right? This coalescing of everything he has experienced and learned during his journey, even if it is a short one, right? It's an incredible journey. The untapped aspects of his psyche have now been embraced, right, and integrated into his new final self, as the physical and the psychological pilgrimage is now complete, right? He finally understood his purpose, his desire, the reason he was born. It's for this moment right here. And ultimately, it's something really quite personal rather than a symbol for the collective. That is the Chimera Ants. It's such an incredible contrast. You go back to that lecture that he had for Netero in his final moments, right? Speaking of shouldering the entire dynasty of the Chimera Ants. And ultimately, it leads to, such a profound moment of happiness for him, right? He gets to spend his final moments with the person who helped him see the beauty of this world. Right, the beauty of smaller things, the unexpected things, rather than this, birthright dynasty that, he used to carry on his shoulder. And, he did understand in the end that, purpose is something you find for yourself. It's not something bestowed upon you, right? And that's one of the reasons, you see a lot of this attitude on display in the last episode, right? That's one of the reasons he completely understood Welfin's approach. Or state of mind. He's more than happy to let him go. He hopes that, he can find Gyro, and he hopes that he can, if possible, live as a human again, right? He understood all of it. He wanted all those things for Welfin because he himself understood those things and wanted those things now. And you do see that this episode is the other side of that coin, the other side of humanity or human nature. Because you see in really recent episodes, there's been this focus on human cruelty and malice and disregard and hatred. But here it's about, the goodness in human nature, right? The beauty of humanity, that ultimately love is all you need. But let's kind of go back to that post-credit scene, right? Because it's an incredible final moment for Meruem's character arc and Komugi as well, right? Yeah, you see just the roles almost kind of get flipped there, don't they? You see that in the darkness, this is something quite new to Meruem, even though now he has a better understanding for Komugi's life up until this point. It's just incredible that Komugi is that figure for him in the last moments, right? That reassuring figure that she has kind of become at this point. And, that's not the side of her I saw early on, right? She's been on her own journey as well at this point. And this is, the final product of it all. She's there for this being in his final moments. More than a being. This is someone quite special to her, right? And, the thing is, she understands that this is not a human, She doesn't care, right? Surely, you know, by touching Meruem's face and essentially seeing the face, she understood, okay, this is not a human, but it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter one bit. I loved how she almost immediately reassures him, right? Because he calls out to her on multiple occasions, right? And you see in the voice acting, there's this, you know, almost, I don't know, not fear, but like this, you know, notion of, oh, is she still there? You know, did she die? Is she still there? You know, is my Komugi still there? But also, you know, to see Meruem in that state it's an interesting thing, isn't it? Right? He needs someone in his final moments. He needs that reassurance. He needs Komugi. He needs Komugi to hold his hand. And, you know, just to hear her say his name one more time. And of course, she drops the sama and she does say Meruem, right? And I'll be joining you soon. Good night. It's an incredible ending. And the image itself, the imagery itself is just beautiful. It's incredible. And to see Komugi hold strong as, you know, the poison courses through her as well. To be strong for Meruem in those final moments, that's just a beautiful thing, isn't it? And again, you know, from a visual standpoint, you know, those photon-like embers, you know, the last remaining few of those, it's a beautiful touch as well, right? And essentially that's actively acting as his final bit of eyesight. And the whole, you know, thing is so tender, especially after a certain point, because, you know, the lighting itself, the depiction of it all, there's such a gentle softness about it, right? About the presentation of it, of both Komugi and Meruem in those moments, right? It's essentially similar to diffused lighting. Instead of, you know, harsh lighting. And yeah, you know, ultimately it's as perfect as it gets. The strongest being of all and the weakest of all, right? The light that illuminates all and the one who cannot see. The mightiest of beings being cradled by the most gentle of all, right? It's just incredible stuff. It really is. And it's, you know, it's just incredibly fulfilling and satisfying to see it all play out and to reach this conclusion and to end it off on that note for Meruem. It's incredible stuff. It really is. So yeah, I'm floored, man. I really am. I do want to go back and watch that a couple of times at least, as soon as possible. But, you know, I think this is a good point to end it off. You know, it might not be the end of the Chimera Ant arc just yet, because there's still some unknowns that need to be, you know, looked at. You know, there's stuff like, you know, the remaining Chimera Ants, people like Colt and the other ants that are still around. You know, how exactly is the world going to, you know, handle that or deal with it? You know, of course, there's the Gon and Killua aspect of it. Gon specifically, how that's going to be handled. And then, of course, there's a matter of Netero's successor. Now, you know, that aspect of it might be separate from the Chimera Ant arc, but it comes out of this arc for sure. But, you know, perhaps I might have one or two more left in terms of wrapping up the arc as a whole and then really truly moving on to the next, because there's some stuff that I still need from this. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're interested in timer-based full length or full opacity or early access, consider checking out the Patreon page. The links are in the description. Also links to social media if that's your thing. Whew. Okay, right then. Thank you so much for joining me, folks, and thank you for your time, because time is precious. It really is. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.